Good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for joining. And this evening, I just wanted to kind of talk about getting the prep right. So last weekend, we had another situation where a game was called off, as I'm sure many of you did, with the weather. In that situation, what do you do? Us as a club, we had the social secretaries kind of jump in and invite people down. It was really good because it was obviously the Champions Cup weekend, so a lot of the boys were down at the club, and the girls as well. Before I forget, down at the club, sort of just enjoying the social aspect of rugby, kind of having a few drinks, having a laugh, enjoying that side of it. But what do you do as a club? It's always good to kind of have a bit of a contingency plan, especially at this time of the year, given the amount of games that may get called off, the unpredictability of the weather over the next couple of weeks. So if you don't have a plan in mind, is it trying to get a T&P together? Is it getting the guys down to use the gym? Is it trying to have it as a bit of a training session? You know, what is it? What is the plan? What is the contingency plan? Because what you don't want to do is just kind of lose out and kind of people flit away for that weekend. You know, it's always good to kind of keep those bonds going, keep people coming back, and more importantly, kind of keep that money flowing through the club, especially at sort of our level, that sort of grassroots amateur level. It's really important for the clubs, really important for sort of the bar staff and the take-ins, all that sort of stuff, to keep people kind of being involved in the club, even if the game isn't on. So obviously, we've got a bit of a situation where we've not got a game. Now, normally, the way that we have been prepping ourselves into the new year for training is kind of looking at potentially what we could have done a little bit better from the weekend before, and try and focus on little fix-ups, little changes, those sort of things that we can introduce to training, as well as building on our fundamentals as we get new people and as we get kind of the same faces back down. You want to try and build a culture and a structure that people can buy into. So what do you do first? You know, if you have a situation where you haven't had a game the week before, what do you then focus on? You know, for us, we try to go back to the basics, go back to the fundamentals of our structure. How are we set up? How are we set up to defend? How are we set up to attack? And try and make sort of the training sessions as enjoyable and as engaging as we possibly could do. But what do you focus on? And again, that's really important in terms of sort of coaches and clubs that might be watching. And then always to have that plan of, okay, well, we've not had a game to kind of review, we've not had a game to kind of look back on from last week. So actually, how do we go about this? Do we try and hammer home kind of our positives and our great way of working and what we want to do as a team? Or do we still try and fix up some of those things that you've noticed in the previous games? Or in this case, because we're into the new year, fix up anything that kind of looked to go wrong kind of in the run up to Christmas in those games there. So again, really, really important to try and get that. And sort of this evening, the last thing to consider is, how do you then prep yourself to hit the ground running in that next game that is on? What we found, and probably more last year than sort of this season's worth of rugby so far, we actually found as a group that doing contact or some contact element running up to a rest week, or after a rest week, should I say, was really, really good. It was really, really beneficial, because we had in the scheduling last year lots of situations where we would play a couple of games, then have a couple of weeks break, and then it would kind of go round in a bit of a cycle. Or you have the situation like we've had this week where the game is cancelled, and therefore, you know, what do you do to make sure guys are ready and prepped for that next follow-in week? So we try and always include a little bit of contact. So whether that be hitting bags or just reminding people about what the defensive structure is, just getting that first contact, that first hit. Because one thing that you kind of forget really quickly in rugby is actually what it feels like to be hit or hit something. And that's one of the biggest things that we really struggle with in terms of when you've had a bit of a break or over this Christmas period into this new year. A lot of what guys kind of forget is, yes, of course, they know the basics, but actually, fundamentally, knowing what it feels like to be physical and be hit or get You know, kind of be hit or be that aggressor coming forward to make those contacts. It's actually really important for us and from what we've found in terms of our time of coaching, just to include that. So as a coach, as a club, what's your one key area? What have you noticed that people kind of benefit from in training after a rest week or leading up into after you've had a bit of a break or a couple of games that are called off? Because it's always important to understand what that is and really try and include it where you can in the training. Has anybody kind of noticed other things that lads have struggled with after a rest week or a break or when a game's sort of cancelled? Any problems, any issues that kind of come on the back of that? Leave us a note in the comments or drop me something on any of the social medias. It'd be great to kind of see what other things you guys are seeing out there.